All right, my fellow English teachers and teachers of rhetorical analysis. In this writing workshop video, I'm going to do yet again my hammering home the thesis using classic commercials to solidify writing introductions for FRQ2 or rhetorical analysis in general. And in this one, I'm going to feature the commercial Harvey and his wife, Folgers Instant Coffee. And all of these commercials can be located for free on YouTube. So this is a classic, quintessential commercial that has not aged well, as you're going to see. And students were rather taken back and aghast at what they saw. It's appropriate, don't get me wrong. It's just by today's standards, its discussion of gender roles and gender spheres is very telling about how far we've come as a society in terms of how we see and project and act out behavior gender definitions. So it's fascinating to have a Socratic seminar about this one, as well as the writing the introductions. So as always, I'll stick to the status quo. I will Bob Ross my instruction for you and show you how to write the introduction 3 separate times using my template of the declarative thesis. And let's begin. Let's jump right in. So one of the caveats I always express with each and every one of my videos is the following notion. I love it when teachers position themselves as the expert writers in the classroom to literally, figuratively, however you want to express it, become a Bob Ross of composition. If you've ever seen The Joy of Painting, Bob Ross always explicitly taught how to execute a particular painting for that episode. And I love it. I love to see teachers get to the proverbial canvas and easel and paint introductions with students, paint topic sentences with students, paint body paragraphs. You're the expert writer. So in order to get my students to write at the caliber that you're going to see in these exemplars and models, it's taken me yeoman's work at that canvas and easel, days and weeks and months of modeling to get them to finally be able to manipulate the template with this degree of exactitude and perfection. It's really nice to build a classroom of writers through that modeling process. So without further ado, let's ask this question. We've watched the commercial. We've had our discussion. How do you construct the introductory paragraph? And my students know that when you when you take the composite of all the expository modes, whether it be rhetorical analysis, literary analysis, argument, persuasion, synthesis, and even research, you have 2 options. You can declare or invert. But here's the kicker. We know that we're going to be performing rhetorical analysis, so I advise my students to always declare the thesis for this. We know our AP Lang friends have a monumental task of cranking 3 essays out in 2 hours. And when we eliminate the guesswork for them, they can really speed up and get into like a good marathon rhythm as they're writing come exam day. So if all the writing component aspect of the exam is demystified for them and clearly elucidated, then they should be able to proceed through their writing in a timely manner. So I always say declare. The inverted we exclusively use for literary analysis. I have a ton in my YouTube channel where we look at poems and short stories, novels, plays, etc., where I demonstrate how to pull the strings of the inverted. And then for our remaining expository modes of argument, persuasion, synthesis, and research, it's actually a 50-50 coin flip. It's totally contingent upon the prompt and how you want to articulate the thesis. So in those expository modes, you have a choice to declare or invert. And again, my YouTube channel has quite a bit on those lessons. So here's another kicker. I like this. It's kind of a cheat or a hack. It's like cracking the code of the College Board. If you go back and look at any FRQ2 in the history of the College Board, you'll note that implicit in the prompt are 2 hidden secret questions. And if students can answer these questions, they're going to get the thesis point. if they can ascertain the meaning of the text correctly. So it all comes down to their reading. They got to be able to parcel it out and get to the nitty-gritty of it. But if they look at these two questions and have an answer for them, they're going to get the thesis point. The first question is, what is the authorial intent? And the second question is, how does the author construct meaning? So one other little thing here that I tell my students, again, it's just little tricks, little secrets like this that I've discovered over my years of teaching. When you answer the question, how does the author construct meaning, that constitutes the thesis statement. So we're going to declare the thesis, meaning we're going to proclaim the thesis in the first sentence. So we're going to answer that question first. How does the author construct meaning? That's why I call it the declarative thesis, because we're going to declare the thesis. And in my template for introductory paragraphs, students always write 4 sentences. So no matter the expository mode, the introductory paragraph is going to be 4 sentences. My students take 3 sentences to answer the question, how does the author construct meaning? And they focus on the 3 most salient, germane, relevant terms, devices, techniques in the passage up for exploration. So they really hone in on those 3 key factors. Sometimes they can throw a 4th in there if it's a really juicy, pithy text. And then 1 sentence of authorial intent. So the template works like this: 3 plus 1. 3, construction of meaning, 1, authorial intent. So I'll model that for you, because otherwise I'm just talking into the ether. In my classroom, I have this poster, and it's Velcro. So whenever we discover a new term, device, technique, we laminate that word and we put it on this Velcro chart. So as we were watching this commercial, I showed my students 3 times. We watched it 3 times. We went to the poster and we pulled off the terms, the devices, techniques that need to go into the thesis statement. It's a really good exercise to visually see how the terms, devices, techniques actually construct meaning in the piece as a whole. And we do this for letters, speeches, etc. It's a very good exercise, and kids begin to see the pattern. New text, same terms over and over again. You know, it's kind of a recurring thing. The same terms appear over and over and over and over again. They just kind of recycle themselves. So if we break down the declarative thesis into a diagram, it would look like this. You're going to begin with the thesis. How does the author construct meaning? Focus on the most germane term, device, technique. And then you want to focus on 3 of them. 3 construct the overall meaning. Sprinkle in a little bit of context and background by virtue of that, but really hold back on the temptation to plot summarize the commercial. You know, you don't want to get into the recitation of this happened first in the commercial, then this happened, then this happened. That's Cliff Note summation, and you're not meeting the demands of the assignment. We're doing rhetorical analysis from start to finish. We're also doing an academic paper, so I want to see a fair amount of tier 2 level vocabulary, and what I mean by that is your average run-of-the-mill SAT level caliber word. But don't totally geek out, right? The idea is not that if you use $1 million words that you're doing the equivalent of good writing. It's a teeter-totter balance. You got to have a little colloquial, little vernacular, some tier 2 in there as well. So you got to keep in mind, you have a personality, right? You have a persona. So don't be contrived. Don't be overly pretentious. Don't think that, you know, using big words is going to impress people. Use the ones that are in your wheelhouse, but spin it academic. Sentence constructs are an important thing. My students have been versed in the art of Strunk & White and their rule number 18, which is featured in their seminal text called Write It Right. Rule number 18 makes the assertion that there's 12 different ways to cobble together a sentence. So you'll see my students attempt to get some good voice rhythm and flow through their syntactical manipulations in this. Ultimately, young, struggling, emerging writers overuse independent clauses and short, simple declarative sentences. So their rhythm is very droning. You get that da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da pattern. And my better writers definitely avoid that. And as I've already mentioned, 4 sentences, right? So we're going to do 3 plus 1. 3 construction of meaning, 1 authorial intent. So let's take a look at student number 1. Given the era in which this commercial first aired, gender spheres were clearly defined, right? So you're kind of getting into the logos of the piece and a little bit of the ethos. And you'll notice my students do a lot more implication of the terms, devices, techniques than forthrightly, expressly stating the terms. So I'll take this from the top again. Given the era in which this commercial first aired, gender spheres were clearly defined. A man's purpose in the home, if he's in fact to brand himself a man, is to be the breadwinner for the family. Conversely, the woman's place is to be the homekeeper whose principal responsibility is to tend to the needs of the man. Folgers instant coffee plays upon these stereotypical gender roles by pulling upon the heartstrings of sexual insecurity and negligence of one's social obligation. So let's unpack the implication just to make sure it's clear. So when this student says pulling upon the heartstrings, that's clearly pathos. And in this, you got the ethos and the logo. So all three of those are in there. This student is making the assertion that those are the three most salient terms, devices, techniques in the commercial. So you got a focus on 3, construction of meaning, 1, authorial intent. So note, there's no regurgitation of the commercial in terms of a play-by-play sports announcement, all right? So just keep that stuff all out of there. Just nuts and bolts thesis statement, right? 3 plus 1. To really demystify it, let's take a look at student number 2. Folgers instant coffee emotionally tugs at the societal definitions of what it means to be a woman within the era of the filming of this commercial. So when you get into emotionally tugs, pathos, right? But you're also implying the logos here too. While men are tasked to bring home the proverbial bacon for the family, the woman's role is to dote upon her man and tend to his every whimsical need. Failure to live up to these standards, especially for women, is tantamount to pure and utter failure. This advertisement even implies that men whose wives fail to meet these obligations have license to stray. And that was something my students found amazing, was the undertones, the implications of, hey, I'll cheat on you if you can't make me a good cup of coffee. You know, holy goodness, we've come a long way over the years. It's fascinating to see that. So again, you have the pathos, the ethos, and the logos in here, all, either explicitly stated or implicitly stated. The vocab is up. Good things like proverbial, right? Good word choice in here, tantamount. The sentence structures are very advanced. They don't always need to be, but to get that voice rhythm and flow. And then ultimately, I want my students to be able to do this. Get to the end of the introduction and have any AP reader stop and say, wow, that was incredible. If this student can sustain this, I'm sure as heck going to award them the sophistication point. And I think sample 1 and sample 2, unquestionably, any AP reader is going to say, yep, if this kid can do this for the duration of the paper, they are all day going to get the unicorn point. So it's very, very good. So again, 3 plus 1. 3, construction of meaning. 1, authorial intent. Focus on those sentence constructs. Focus on the tier 2. And all will be well. Student number 3 steps to the plate and does the following. The message is clear. A woman of the era who can't make a decent cup of coffee deserves to be cheated on. Start with the logos. And conversely, if she dutifully serves the every whim of her man, he's therefore obliged to be loyal and devout. Within this era, gender roles clearly delineated the fact that a woman's job was to tend to her man docilely. Failure to meet these standards spoke of one thing: the woman's utter failure to fulfill her God-given duties. Right, so you really got to focus on the gender spheres, the gender roles, the gender politics of the era, the implicit implication that the man has license to cheat if she can't make him a good cup of coffee. He's got, carte blanche at the office with the office girls. So all of those things are variables in this in terms of the construction of meaning. So as always, all 3 of these, 3 plus 1, every single time, 4 sentences, tier 2 sentence constructs. So all day long, every single time a student approaches rhetorical analysis, they can use the declarative template without fail. So note that what I've done for simplicity's sake in terms of downloading slides is I made videos for 5 commercials. So I did Coke Keeps You Thin, Nolan Cheese, this Folgers commercial, Guinness wheelchair, and the Six Fingers toy. So you can download all 5 of these if you want. If you go to teachinghowtowrite.com, and they are there for you. Just browse along. And then if you have any questions, feel free to reach out, teachingwritingcoach@gmail.com. Also note, I'm a lead teacher for the National Writing Project. I've teamed up with them, and we offer a slew of professional development opportunities. I also do a lot of consulting. I push into districts and train departments. I also do one-on-one coaching. If that's something you're interested in, feel free to reach out, teachingwritingcoach@gmail.com, or my website has quite a bit of information, www.teachinghowtowrite.com. Be well for now. Happy teaching and happy writing.